I'm OGDuffy, and in this video we're taking a look at the mighty Capcom video arcade game producers. Now, this company are synonymous throughout the video game industry. They've created brilliant games throughout, well, my history anyway. I grew up with these games through the arcades and they were all absolute classics and beasts, and to be honest, one particular title that they produced back in the day is still going strong to this very day and has spawned numerous amounts of sequels and everything else. So without further ado, we're going to take a trip back to the 1980s, and these were the releases by the mighty Capcom of the 1980s. So without further ado, let's get to it.
So this is it, Capcom's first ever video arcade game release, and it was Vulgus, a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up. Released in Japan first in May 1984, and shortly afterwards distributed in North America by SNK, but it was still a Capcom developed game. Worked very well. As you can see, at certain points there's power-ups you collect and all that sort of stuff, and that power-up become quite recognisable with Capcom, shall we say, as it appears in some of their later games. This was Capcom's first release, so it's given us a little taste of what we had in store later down the line. As we know, Capcom produced some absolutely amazing, epic arcade games, and this was their first ever release, so a very bright, good little shoot 'em up, taste of things to come, and it was a good little game. Not their greatest, but hey, for a first ever release, awesome. So next up here, this was released in 1984 December, so it was at the end of the year. This was Capcom's second release game and is still a classic by many today. And as I was saying about that power sign, the power up sign, there it is, very similar to Vulgus. But again, they upgraded from Vulgus onto this, and this is still a classic, as I say, today. People still play this loads. A great game, very well received, got rave reviews, and this really did help start to set Capcom as the benchmark arcade video game makers that they were. Now, from this point onwards, there were several follow-ups made, but again, that'll come in later videos because this only covers the 1980s. But this was a classic, it was awesome, and Capcom very well deserved with this. It was a great release. We now move into 1985, and their first release of this year was Commando, and it was released in May 85. Now, this wasn't anything to do with the Arnold Schwarzenegger film of the same name in the same year. It wasn't endorsed, licensed, or anything like that. It was very clever marketing on the Capcom's front, maybe. I don't know, who knows, but naming it the same as the film might have helped them out greatly. But again, this was Capcom advancing again. It just took shoot 'em ups to another level. This was awesome, as you can see here. I mean, although it was a vertical scrolling game, again, you controlled how quickly you ran up the screen. So this took their game styles and everything else to a different level. It was ported to loads of home versions. I mean, it was on Atari, it was on Nintendos, it was on Spectrums and Commodore 64s at the time. This was converted onto pretty much every home system at that time. A mega popular title and a great little money spinner. Well done, Capcom. Now, in September of 85, this was their fourth release by Capcom, and it's the awesome Ghosts and Goblins. This game was so well received, and again, like the previous game Commando, it was rolled out onto most home systems at the time, including Ataris, etc. So this was a massive money spinner for Capcom, and rightly so, because the graphics, the gameplay and everything else was awesome. It was also the first side-scrolling game that Capcom produced, and graphically and the music and everything for this was just so complete. It was just such an amazing game. It converted fairly well as well, and shifted over 4.2 million units, this game title. So what can you say? An absolute brilliant game, and one that gets mentioned again during the 1990s, I believe, but hey, that's for another video. This was the 5th game released in the 1980s by Capcom, and it was released in August 1987, and probably one of the most significant game releases of all time. This went on to spawn the rest of the Street Fighter series, which is probably the most played beat-em-up game to date historically, I would imagine. For me, this is my go-to every single time. Not this version, but certain versions within the Street Fighter series. But if it wasn't for this one, we wouldn't have had the others. So what a great way to start. Now, if any game company want to put themselves on a map, let's be honest, if I said to you Capcom, you're going to say to me probably Street Fighter. This is the game that done it. This gave them worldwide success, and the estimated fortunes that this game has made with the various spin-offs and various media and everything else is absolutely huge. One of the biggest game franchises of all time. So if this doesn't set you on the map, Capcom, nothing will. Nearly the end of the 80s, we've got one more game to go, but this one, what a great job, well played. Here we go, the 6th and final release of the 1980s for Capcom, and this was 1989, in December of 89, Final Fight. This was a side-scrolling beat-em-up, quite a load of games in this genre. There is lots. I mean, you're talking Double Dragons and that sort of stuff, and they were all brilliant. But this one, graphically, was just superb for the time. I mean, the colours, the sound, everything for this was absolutely amazing. And like I say, this just finished off the 80s for Capcom on an absolute high. Now, the 90s for Capcom were huge, and as I said, that follows in another video, so stay tuned. I'll give you some details for that later, but just a bit of a novelty bit of fact for you here. The actor Robin Williams stated that he named his son Cody Williams after a video game character, which is believed to be Cody from this very game, Final Fight. So it's good enough for Robin Williams, it's good enough for me. Well done, Capcom, great 80s performance.
So there we go. That concludes what a great start to a brilliant company. Absolutely amazing games. They obviously produced 6 games in the 1980s on the video arcade systems. All brilliant. I mean, they kicked off obviously with Vulgus. Then we had your 1942, your Commandos, your Ghosts and Goblins, Street Fighter, and of course Final Fight to kick things off. But of course, what come after the 80s? The 90s, and Capcom certainly didn't rest on their morals here. This is when they accelerated and they went into overdrive. So stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, all that good stuff, because I'm going to be doing the Capcom 1990s video arcade game releases also, so you don't want to miss that, along with other great content. So look after yourselves, stay safe, and see you again soon for part 2 or some other video I'll produce. Anyway, see you soon. I've been OGDuffy. Rock and roll. If you watch the video and you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe for more great videos. Thanks for watching.